Okay, so yes, I'm another Dave, and ironically, my family hails from Aberdeen as of about 1840 or so, so I feel a certain linkage to that granite in the previous presentation. Yeah, what I want to talk to you about actually is the whole fixed mobile convergence thing, something that's kind of dominated my professional life now for the past several years, as that's been pretty much the exclusive focus of what I've been working on, both in Ericsson and at the Broadband Forum. And so the question becomes, how did we get here? This actually started in 2016. I mean, we've been around the buoy of fixed mobile convergence before. We did this in the LTE era back in sort of the mid-2000s. But the world's been quite a different place since then, because then we didn't really get the traction to take off. This time around, we were actually sort of dragged to the table. 10 operators approached the Broadband Forum to work with 3GPP on doing FMC for release 16. We ended up doing a joint workshop with 3GPP. We examined the use cases that the operators were interested in. We figured out the goals. We figured out how we would work together, because we do have very different ways of working, different IPR rules, etc. We ended up agreeing on sort of doing a ship steaming in parallel, semaphoring back and forth, and depending an awful lot on company participation in both bodies, but we more or less kicked off the work. We ended up doing a whole lot of studying of what needed to be done to add fixed access to 5G. That took a long time. That produced hundreds of pages of complete blather as far as the documents are concerned, as we kind of felt all aspects of the elephant. We wrapped that up at the end of last year. What we're doing now is we are actually writing the formal specifications, and the goal is to wrap this up with formal document approval in March 2020. There will be maybe a few items punted out, some follow-on work, some enhancements, but the lion's share of the heavy lifting is going to be done in that time frame. And this is pretty much on track. We've made all of the hard decisions that needed to be made the compromises between the vendors, and we're primarily in the exercise of documenting this now. Now, there's a whole lot of drivers for convergence, and of course, they fall into the usual two classes. The first is monetizing. We have a whole lot of opportunity for new and improved services. We're adding fixed wireless access features in the 5G core to enable this. Bonded accesses such that I can use both wireless and wireline together. That allows me to, for example, use wireless to do some infill in areas that are hard to upgrade to fiber. We can extend 3GPP cell phone services into the home over the Wi-Fi now, so you have a consistent identity when you're dealing with the network for personalization and policies. And that whole service convergence aspect, I could go on for quite a long time, but what it ultimately leads to is the very consistent experience of when you're dealing with the network. We can look at things, for example, as adding soft credentials to individual PCs, so we can do additional personalization. In that regard, we can do a much more improved quality of experience, seamless access. And the one thing that's not on here is that with the whole network slicing thing and the infrastructure for network slicing, what we have is a whole out-of-the-box enabler for a whole set of new business models. And much of the inter-carrier aspects for establishing those new business models will have a whole lot of automation brought to it. Now, at the same time, the other thing the carriers have been harping on forever is trying to optimize their networks. My entire career in technology, as long as I've been in telecom, has been some form of optimizing the networks and squeezing pennies out in some form or other. And with the fixed mobile convergence, this is seen as a major opportunity to do things like completely streamline the set of network functions the network needs to support to provide services. And this, of course, leads to reduce system integration, skills, training, generation of scripts for customer service, etc. We have the ability to accelerate service creation because we have this fully automated and cloudified service management infrastructure. And lots of opportunities for differentiation and, of course, like I've mentioned, again, the whole sort of opportunities brought in by slicing, etc. Now that meant we had a whole lot of guiding principles in terms of how we were going to address this problem. And unlike the first time around when the world was different, we thought about this a lot more going into this. We wanted to make sure there was a very loose coupling and minimal aspects between the access network and the core network. Certainly we did not want to be introducing a whole lot of changes to the 5G core, a whole lot of dependencies. The whole idea was this had to be sort of a true convergence architecture, not simply taking absolutely everything every network could do with every technology possible and trying to munge it together and trying to make it work in some sort of consistent architectural fashion. We needed a smooth migration path. Carriers just don't spontaneously flip things and do flag days. There had to be an opportunity for an incremental evolution of the network as it went through sort of the introduction of the technology, the transformation, and eventually you would get to a full support. And ideally, the network did not have a lot of barnacles left on it at the end of the day in the process of making that happen. And of course, we wanted to maximize the addressable market. And when you take a look at the broadband market, that becomes relatively complicated because we have an awful lot of technologies out there. We aren't sort of rolling them over on sort of a every decade basis like the radio guys are doing. We're in a continual set of flux and a continual variety of technologies out there depending on the circumstances of the individual carriers. Early in the process, we had this Executive Action Council briefing where we had a whole lot of networking CTOs and senior people, and we were given some very good advice, which was basically every carrier was going to have a unique starting point, and we really needed to be cognizant of that in terms of how we took the work forward. Now, that being said, there's a lot of barriers to transforming your network. I mean, wireline access is a significantly different business than the mobile world. There isn't this requirement for universal access and mobility. And I'll admit, I gotta give the wireless guys credit. The fact that I can go anywhere in the world and this thing just works, to me is actually pretty cool. But in the wireline world, like I said, we have all these generations of technology that have been rolled out into different districts, and we have these islands of various generations of technology that we need to deal with. And so the business cycles for refreshing that, rolling the stuff over, doing service enhancement, et cetera, are all completely different. And as well as the channels to market. I don't see fixed access having booths in every shopping mall in North America. We also have different organizational structures within the operators that are looking to address this. You know, the fixed side and the mobile side tend to be completely different. They involve different skill sets and different compartmentalizations. And a lot of that is because we've been stuck with bespoke hardware for the longest time. And there is this sort of whole need for a seamless transition in terms of trying to make this happen. Now, so the question now becomes not from how do we get here, but how do you get there? And in essence, you know, the industry transformation trends are already breaking barriers. I mean, we're looking at the move to white boxes, virtualization, x86, et cetera. Now, the key thing about the mobile world is when they do a whole new generation of technology, they actually try and subsume everything that has gone before and roll the whole thing up into it. And so 5G is sort of this industry transformation on steroids in terms of how it has been architected. It already has all kinds of stuff for supporting virtualization, scale out, service discovery, et cetera. We are already seeing the trend towards converged infrastructure, the move of a lot of things to cloud, and cloud hosting, for example, is leading to organizational realignments, even completely independent of 5G, and 5G is in a position to leverage that. There is all kinds of opportunities with the 5G to drive this by the bundling of services. We can combine channels to market, we can increase customer stickiness, et cetera, and FMC is a key part of that. Now, what the Broadband Forum has been working on as part of the whole FMC thing is adding a seamless transition of wireless to wireline, specifically with a strategy. We want to eliminate dependencies between each of the necessary steps so they do not need tight coordination. We wanted to minimize the changes to the 5G architecture. So the artifacts of transformation would not leave what I would call permanent scars or the barnacles I alluded to earlier. And what we have is a toolkit that we can express really as like 3 key concepts, and that is coexistence, interworking, and migration. Now I'm about to put a complicated picture up here, because these are sort of all the various cases that we were considering, and in fact, to get all of them, you need to look really closely. So we have this notion of the existing legacy network as it exists today, where I have an existing legacy or fixed network RG, which is sort of on the bottom row, connects through a BNG and connects to the core. And the BNGs themselves have become rather complicated service platforms. We're going through this exercise of trying to disaggregate it right now. And the dog's breakfast shopping list of stuff that BNGs can do is quite astounding. But we are looking at various options within that. First off, for how you transform to the 5G core, and then ultimately how you do the whole converged story. And so we've ended up introducing sort of 3 key functions that we're going to document. The first is the idea of a 5G-enabled CPE. It would have credentials, it would have a signaling stack, it would have a high degree of automated fulfillment, being able to participate in network slicing, and various other capabilities of the 5G core. We are introducing means of interworking both either a 5G RG or a legacy RG across the existing fixed access into the 5G core, and we have 2 ways of doing that. One is through the introduction of what's known as an access gateway function, and which we would call sort of an L2 interworking solution. And we also have the notion of a fixed mobile interworking function, which is the interworking at L3 and comes off the back of a BNG. And then we have various options for how we would support 3GPP devices in the home. In the FNRG, there is a possibility of an over-the-top solution along the lines of those that are employed today. It uses encryption and is a bit complicated, and we're looking to streamline that significantly with the idea of the 5G RG, so that we can start doing the personalized services for devices even when they're connected on the Wi-Fi. So what I wanted to do is sort of go into the 3 concepts and outline precisely what they are. The first is coexistence. And so the notion of coexistence is the idea that all options can be simultaneously supported by the access network. So we don't need any forklifts or flag days required for transformation. This can be sort of an overbuild on top of the existing infrastructure. It respects the existing wholesale and regulatory markets. A lot of operators don't necessarily own the access equipment that they are servicing their customers through, and in some cases that's an explicit regulatory requirement of the environment that they're in. With coexistence, various forms of service delivery can be left in place or re-engineered for 5G delivery according to the business need or business imperative. And again, this maximized the addressable market. Now this sounds easy, but it was a bit trickier than we thought it would be. Now the key thing here is the 5G handoff point is the aggregation network, which means we don't have the problem of all the various generations of access technology. That is sort of homogenized out through the interconnecting at that point. But that also meant that to make this thing work, all of the FMC protocol enhancements that we did need to be able to pass transparently through unmodified access nodes, and in many cases we needed, or many aspects of it, we needed to impersonate the existing protocols because of specific value-added features or operational metadata that was added to those protocols as they transited through existing OLTs, DSLAMs, etc. So that's embodied in the work. The next part was interworking. It was very important that the existing residential gateways could attach to the 5G core with minimal impacts. Operators have defined business cycles for CPE upgrade, and in fact, in some cases, operators may decide to stick with the legacy equipment and simply converge the core until they have a specific business imperative or new service that they want to introduce. And the CPE itself is a significant investment, but we wanted to give the operators that increased flexibility in terms of how they ran their business, and also eliminate, again, the notion of the flag day. We can change the core without having to change the customer. Now, as I also mentioned, there was an L3 interworking solution provided with this so that unmodified BNGs could also map to the 5G core. That one probably isn't going to get that much uptake. It looks kind of like a chain of boxes, and that in itself becomes a bit of an impediment. But again, how do we do this? Well, the AGF at layer 2, or the FMIF, translates the legacy protocols and user plane signaling and maps it onto 5GC, where the actual function in the network, that the AGF or the FMIF actually is a proxy signaling point and makes the existing FNRG look like a cell phone or another 5G-enabled device to the network. Now, that would have suggested we also needed like a big rack of 5G credential chips sitting beside this device, which wasn't really tractable. So we also created and worked with 3GPP on the idea of a new class of credentials where we could demonstrate trust through an existing wireline access facility. And then finally, the notion of migration, and that is the idea that CPE and services could be independently upgraded to be 5G capable. And again, this decoupled the deployment of the 5G core from the rollout of CPE and the other aspects of network transformation. We could provide services to customers who still continue to exist on bringing their own devices, and there are customers out there who will do that. And the service migration and timing could be based on business imperatives, and it also gave us the possibility of even just doing customer self-install. And that's sort of big if you can actually do that without having to do a truck roll. Now again, how do we do that? Of course, the AGF auto-senses the CPE type and then adapts the personality of the device it's serving accordingly. And then, of course, the coexistence model permits existing services to coexist side by side with 5G access and allows the operator to determine the timing and the business requirements for actually doing the transforming of the services themselves. So what this gives us is a fairly straightforward transformation narrative. It's a 4-step process. I wouldn't call it rehab, but it's the same concept that it can be expressed simply. So the first thing is you're going to deploy your 5G core, your AGF, FMIF, and services. You populate the subscriber database. This is the alternative credentials for the interworking of the existing FNRG subscribers. Then if you connect the existing subscribers to the 5GC, the service just continues. It's just delivered by the new core. And then you can roll out the new CPE according to your business cycles and business imperatives should you choose to do that. So that's kind of the story. The key takeaways with this is first, the move to 5G is a once-in-a-lifetime convergence opportunity. There is that sort of alignment of technology transformation, restructuring of operations and carriers as it is, and this new technology coming along to take advantage of this. It does add significant capability and automation to fixed networks. When you get to that point, there's a whole lot of additional subscriber management. Extending the control plane to the home allows a lot of additional service flexibility. It's going to arrive in largely turnkey packages because of the way the architecture has been specified. Now, with respect to specifically FMC, the operator input was key in driving the requirements to enable this sort of seamless transformation. We got a lot of really good input and a lot of really good suggestions from the operators who've participated in this work. And so we've been focusing real hard not only on the FMC and the 5G convergence, but eliminating the barriers to enable the leap to that. So what I've been talking about right now is also available in a take-home format, and I've noticed many of you have picked up copies of it. It's MD464 at the back on migrating fixed access to the 5G core. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.